Yes, I'm hearing notifications. I'm pulling up a monitor now.
Discord's going crazy.
Discord is going crazy. Hi, everybody. We are live now. Welcome to the pre-show, Grim. Pre-show, Graham.
Is that a thing?
It is now.
Anyway, good evening. Well, actually, good morning.
Good morning to you. It is once again another early morning for you, late night.
But at least we're in the same month. We're in the same month this time.
We are in the same month. You are right. Yes. You've been in October for a whole day 8 hours. 8 more hours than I have. Tonight, we are. You may have noticed there is a third screen up here, and we're currently testing out some things. And I am going to actually go a step further here, and I realize that perhaps maybe this doesn't look as good as I wanted it to. And I'm going to do an iteration 3. So before we went live, we actually did an iteration 2 and an iteration 1 of this little layout number here that you see. And I'm going to do an iteration 3 right now, and you can all join me for that because I'm unhappy, and I'm unhappy with the original result.
You're not a perfectionist, but you're pretty much being a perfectionist, aren't you?
That's what I'm saying here. So what I'm changing in iteration 3 here is I am now going to extend these down, and well, maybe not extend them down, but I feel like having them center to the bottom person might be a better call, right? So something like that. Oh, did that just duplicate everything, or am I going crazy? I think. Oh wait, because yeah, it's still left over there. That's why. Yeah. So if I delete that, right? It's hard to visualize without with this other one in the way here.
Yes, because it's.
Anyway,
you just took a screenshot and thrown that in the background.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Exactly. It's just a screenshot back there. It's. So I feel like that would probably work best. Looks like there's equidistant. So if I do this now, and I download this as another ping, and we'll come over here. So I'm back now on Restream, and we're going to just do this guy, and we're going to see if that works. There we go. I think that works out well. Yeah, we'll stick with that. That's pretty cool. If I wanted to get fancy with it, I guess what I could do is, make it like connect at the top, or I don't know, do something fun with it. But I think that works for now.
It does.
That works for now. But since it's just you and I, we're going to do this, and we're going to go back to this guy.
I was going to say that.
That looks much cleaner for now. So we'll go with that. Hi, everybody watching. We are going to be talking about a news story tonight that is of great interest to me. I really like this story. It's a new augmented reality applications assist astronaut repairs to the space station.
So, do you like this just because it's because of the type of technology that's involved, or is it just because it's space?
Neither. Both, all of the above and more. All of the above, and they're not my primary reason for loving this story. I think the primary reason I love the story is because of the training aspect of, or not the training aspect of it, the maintenance and repair aspect of it. Using the technology. So if you want to go that far, that's kind of what I'm looking at, is that aspect of it.
See, I'm just a geek for anything to do with space, if I'm honest.
Oh, perfect.
Anything space oriented, I just get excited. It's just the way I am.
Yeah, space.
I'm not going to apologize for it.
Don't apologize. Space is cool. Let's see here. I'm gonna write can AR assist repairs in space. If you're watching live, the answer is yes. We'll get to it. but we always have to have what it's not necessarily a clickbaity title. It's what is that title? It's like it's not misleading. It's a question that you want answered. Oh shoot! Did I tell him the wrong time? Oh shoot! I must have.
I think there might be a summertime issue.
I think that's probably it. Let's see here.
Do they have summertime over there? This is the problem when you're trying to do like not just
global
broadcasting.
Yeah, it's really wild, right? I have to like keep track of all these different time zones. I think we talked about it last week or something.
Yeah.
With all the different responsibilities.
I think I probably need to put, because I've now got on my phone, I've got the two. I've got UK time. I've got because you're Pacific time.
Pacific,
and then we'll now need Australian time as well. I feel the need to maybe have something in my the office where I'm at, where you have all the different clocks with the labels on about where you're at. Just because I could.
All right, I'm going to look up some It Came Froms this week, and hopefully our special guest will be okay with answering them. She was on for the pre-show. I think that's usually kind of a good litmus to tell if somebody's okay with answering some of these questions. But we'll pick some pretty generic ones here. Let's see. So we have some in the bank here. I think we talked about these last week.
We did. Some of them we want to keep for actual big stories, I think. So
yeah. I mean, this one kind of goes along with this story, this what's the future, digital or AR? I think that could be a good one to include here. You know, kind of like a AR VR package.
There was a couple that are in the feed, which I thought were quite interesting. There's two or three that all sit around the difference between being a contractor and being a full-time employee.
Yeah, I like that one. Let's see. Let's do, let me see here. I have so many. I've tried to keep the lab Discord from expanding too much beyond just a couple channels, and we're working on so many things that
load up everywhere.
Yeah.
But there's the one called Contracting Blues, and there was another one that was close to it.
Anyone do freelance, independent contractor, work long term. That one's kind of contracting. Yeah, they're like right next to each other, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. So, yeah, no, there is that one, and there is one about 3 above it. Contract versus permanent positions. You do one or the other.
Yeah, you know, I think there's 3 agreements on that one. Let's talk about that one, the contract versus permanent positions. And when I say agreements, we have like a little response options in our Discord that we use to what's the word I'm looking for here? We use to identify and figure out which ones we want to talk about. And that one looks like we're all in agreement that we should talk about it. So let's do that one.
Yeah. Did you look at the one that titled Worst Design Ever?
I did.
Did you actually look at the website?
I did.
It was. It's still. I mean, useless for a podcast because it is a very visual thing. But I've never seen anything quite like it.
Yeah, I
was different.
Look, you know, it's. I get where they're coming from.
I see. I don't. I mean, I just saw it as a piece of performance art, and I don't get art. So
no. I get where they're coming from and saying that this is the worst UI ever. However, this to me is a spreadsheet that somebody converted into a website, and I think it serves a very specific purpose. I don't understand the context behind it, and so I don't know how it's being used. You might have somebody with this up over 5 monitors stretched out, and
I think you're giving them a lot of kudos and depth into what they've done. I think it's just, from what I've read about it, it is literally just, it's a sort of piece of statement art of what the website could be. It doesn't help that it's in German. I don't speak German, or don't read German. So there's only that was a bit of a struggle as well. But I thought if on a purely, if you had a more, I mean, obviously we could bring it up on here, but it's it was interesting to look at.
Yeah. Let's see here. So we have
taking you off track.
That's okay. Let's pick out 2 more of these things here. So we have some agreement on this other one here. Beginner UX projects, right? I think that one's a pretty good one about thought process of like, how do you think about a problem first, or do you go research things that are existing, or it's kind of like strategy. How do you approach a product?
It's also, but it's about developing your own portfolio, because clearly that with that one, they haven't got a client. They just want to show that they've got skills and develop skills. So it's so they want to take almost any product and solve their own pain points. It's easy to find somebody else to pay you to do work.
Yeah, that could be a good one. Let's pull that one in just for now. Yeah. And if we find another one that we like better, we can always add that to the bank below. And
there was a really quick one, I thought. Does it matter if your letter of recommendation is signed by a postdoc versus a professor?
Ooh.
I thought it said that would be vaguely interesting. Remember, we had the one that we talked about last week when the interviewee couldn't work out why they didn't get the job.
Yeah.
And it was very kind of a simplistic answer. I think this falls into the same sort of vein, as in, does it really matter? As in, I don't think it really matters.
I mean,
personal reference.
I mean, we could answer that even in the pre-show. I think for letters of rec, that to me is more of like a getting into grad school, getting into higher education type of deal. I don't think a lot of I don't think it matters in industry as much, where letters of rec are more like a phone call from one person to another to say, hey, how does this person work?
Is this person actually real?
Yeah,
stuff. Yeah. It's interesting though, isn't it? I mean, the amount of times with a few people I've taken on recently, I think there's the past couple I've never actually followed up on the references. I've just been very much of the, these guys are brilliant, and I really like them. I like their attitude and all that sort of stuff. And they exist on LinkedIn, so that kind of works for me.
That's always kind of the key, right? If they exist on LinkedIn, then they exist.
Yes. Looking on Facebook and Twitter to see what they truly say, and whether they're clever enough to lock their stuff down or not.
Yeah. What if we did?
Key tip to everybody: lock down your Facebook before you apply for a job.
Oh yeah. Oh certainly.
And I don't care how clean you think your Facebook is; it's not as clean as you think it is.
Oh yeah. Lock it down, and then keep it locked down. Let's just be honest here.
I keep some of the things that I post. Sometimes mine keeps on opening up, and because the way that the permissions work. So I'm going to have. That's one of the reasons I spent this week opening up, creating some of the social media channels that you saw that I created for my other podcast, and that was part of the reason, was to start segregating some of that stuff off, so my personal Facebook doesn't keep on opening up to it the entire world.
Yep, that's that's why we kept ours separate, and because both Blake and I manage some of the stuff behind the scenes here, it gives us kind of anonymity. Wow.
That word, yes.
Why can't I say it? Anyway, it gives us it keeps us anonymous in terms of, if we post something on Reddit or if we post something on Twitter, you can't really tell who did it. So there's like a minimal embarrassment, and it kind of encourage us to keep engaging.
Yeah. No, good shout.
Which is we can kind of be cheeky with the responses sometimes. What about this? I like this one. What about how to put school, company, HCI projects on LinkedIn? Because this is like a partnership with actual companies, and it's basically talking about how do you showcase work that you can't necessarily if you're under NDA or private portfolio stuff. I think there's especially in a project where perhaps you are working in a classroom setting, it might be different, and so this could be a fun one to answer. How do you feel about it?
Yeah, let's go through it, because it highlights there's a difference between just putting up a school project or a college project that's been set by a lecturer and something that is actually being set by a company that you're engaging with. So as long as you get agreement from them, then that's all good.
Yeah. Now, I can't understand why the first couple that I posted on here were like white text, and then the next one or carried over the. Anyway, I'm going crazy is what I'm trying to describe here. Okay, that works. Okay, so I think we have our little. It came from. Do we have anybody in the waiting room? Doesn't look like it yet.
I think he's speeding home as fast as he possibly can.
I think so. I messed up the time. Look, folks, you get some right, you get some wrong. That was a wrong call.
At least we know for next time.
We do know for next time. It's an hour separated. Okay. So we got some good stories there.
Have you got your one more thing? Yes.
Yep, I do. Have you seen that?
I've seen the first 2 episodes, I think.
Okay. I'll be careful with how I talk about it.
Yeah, no, it's fine. It's not one of these things that I put on in the TV in the background. So I watched the first couple, and I thought it was it even just the first episode? Might have been. And I was like, actually, this is some things I have on the background just to work with, and I was like, actually, this needs me to sit down and watch it.
It demands attention. Yeah.
Yes. So that's why I sort of stopped watching it after that episode, and then I need to sit down with it and watch it properly.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, you can miss a lot of context if you're not reading the subtitles, or even if you have it dubbed. I know the translation isn't as good as the subtitles.
I was gonna say, because I was doing the dubbed version, so.
Yeah, so I would highly recommend watching it with Korean language selected and English subtitles, not closed caption. You don't want English closed caption. You want English subtitles, because that translation is better and more true. Even though it's still not enough to. I feel like we're kind of spoiling my one more thing, but that's okay. Even though that that translation to English isn't nearly doesn't do the story enough justice, I guess, is what I'm saying. So, there's a reason that it is a worldwide phenomenon right now.
Yeah, no, it's. I thought I'd stumbled upon something quite unique, and then you realize that everybody else is watching it as well.
Yeah. See, we'll talk about it. It's my. We'll talk about it later.
Again, I do hope our third guest comes along, because I want to talk about their one more thing, because that sounds really cool.
Yeah, I do hope so too. I was going to say something. So we got about 10 minutes here. I think our show notes are good. We're good to go there. If you're joining us wherever you're watching, give us a little comment. Let us know you're watching. We always like hearing from you. Especially, I will say, especially if you have been at HFES this week. Say hello and let us know how HFES was. I was really bummed that I couldn't be there in person. Blake is bummed that he couldn't be there in person. We did have a member from our lab go, so we'll hopefully get a report from her. And we'll be catching up with some other folks, hopefully about the in-person event, and we'll do some coverage around the digital event later this month. But that's kind of in the show notes too, so I don't know why I'm saying it now. Just kind of. In the show notes here under flow, I feel like I should probably bold that and increase the size just so that way it's not missed. I did put human factors issues in space, and the ones that are highlighted I feel like we can kind of spend a little bit more time on, since
the key bits,
they're kind of more applicable to this specific problem space.
Yeah, happy with that.
Okay.
Maintenance. Yeah, I put in a bit at the article discussion, because the second article that I sourced, you see under article discussion, basically I put the HoloLens isn't new. It actually went up in 2015, which I thought was quite interesting.
Is that? So I wonder.
I've been trying to work out what the actual difference is. I feel that this went up, and basically this new project is different, but I think it's just worth for completeness, highlighting that they've been trying to do this for a while.
Yeah, maybe. Well, this is kind of kicking off their new T2 AR project, right?
Yeah.
What does T2 stand for? That's important context.
Oh, it is. I've closed the actual thing up now. Oh, there we go. Let's bring that back.
T2 AR. I have no idea.
Google that. T2 AR. Yeah, I can't.
Yeah, and I know we've done an interview with the person who won the Human Factors Prize from HFES back in 2018, Adam Brawley. He did some research using the HoloLens and ISS. So we have an interview on it.
That's cool.
I also, I don't know what what the difference is here. I just saw it and was like, oh yeah, that's kind of cool. It's right up our alley. I didn't stop to think about, wait, have I seen this before?
Yeah, it was just because I was just searching around it just to get some contact, and then I think this is the original one was doing the basically tethered to the ground station effectively, in that remote expert mode. Again, that procedure mode just sounds so similar.
It does. I'm sure there are some nuances.
There'll be some key differences, no doubt. Or maybe it's just because this is purely for internal maintenance, as opposed to
tasks. I wonder if they have to go through some certification stuff or whatever before they can actually approve it for maintenance tasks.
So I think that the original sidekick was to do procedures on actual operating the machinery itself. And so
this is maintenance on that machinery.
Whereas this is maintenance. So this is the new thing, right?
Great. Okay.
That feels better.
I like that much more. Okay.
Yes.
I feel good now.
Is it worth putting that link to your previous interview in the show notes?
I will.
Cool.
I'll put it at the tail end. I usually link all those things together at the very end. Putting
Fine.
School projects on LinkedIn. I just got a text here. What is that? Is that?
No, that was a Discord from.
Oh, bots.
E2, yeah.
I don't know why a bot goes off twice. One bot is certainly faster than the other. I think it's the Restream bot that's. Oh, it's if that's fast. Really?
That's if this then that. Yeah, that one. That one that was one off.
Oh, Restream. Okay, I have like 3 bots going on that do the what? Okay.
You got one on Twitch, one on Restream, one on this then that. You're all over it like a rash.
Yeah. Twitch, Restream, and IFT. I need to cut that down because I feel like that's spammy. I hate being spammy. LinkedIn. The difference between contracted and just finishing up some of these show notes here. Difference between contracted and permanent position. And B, which is beginner UX projects. What was that one about? I forget. It was. What was that one?
Using the company school joint, being able to put them into your portfolio. Where to put them on LinkedIn?
That was the first one.
Oh, that was the first one.
Yeah.
How do they start the first UX project?
How do you start a new project?
Yeah,
and approaches to starting a new project
to improve their own skills. I think that's important bit because it's not just a project. It's they want to just use them to improve their own skills.
Yeah. So for context, listeners can't see this and viewers can't see this right now in the show notes because they're a mess. Honestly, that's why we don't show them. But they get the job. They get the job done. But I've started doing this because when we go through and do the promotion for the show, it's like, hey, check out our latest episode. It's augmented reality in space for repairs, blah, 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 tag everybody. And then these 3 here, right, putting school projects on LinkedIn, the difference between contracted and permanent positions and approaches to starting a new project to improve skills. I started putting those questions that we answer into the tweet or the post or whatever to generate more interest. If they're not interested in the main story, you might be interested in those, and so this is a way for me to concisely summarize what those are and kind of what we talk about, and this is the first time doing it, so anyway.
Your level of organization is amazing. Well done.
We'll see how we get through it.
You're better than me when considering one of the reasons I didn't dive into the show notes as early as I did in the previous 2 weeks is that I forgot that I was doing an interview tomorrow afternoon. And so I was like, I better because I got a message from them, are you going to send us a question? So oh, yes, I am.
Yeah, that.
Quick, write some questions.
But in that regard, you are much more prepared than we are because when we do interviews, it's very much like boilerplate questions, and we say that the conversation can go off the rails. Like we say, hey, generally with like our conference coverage stuff, we say like, what brings you here? Like, what are you presenting on? What's your background? And then we jump into what, whatever we're talking to them about, whether it be, a specific panel that they were on, or if it's, I don't know, like an organization that they represent or something. We talk about that thing. And it's, I think the only time we really spent a lot of time preparing questions was when we did, interviews for HFES president candidates, right? When we talked to Chris Reed and Camille Paris, and we wanted to ask them really hard questions, and we did.
Oh, well done.
And we were like, hey, these questions are going to be really, we asked them questions about like diversity and representation and human factors. And this was right around all the George Floyd protests, and so it was it's like pressing society leaders on some pressing topics that people wanted to hear about. And it was the first time where I was like, oh, these are good questions.
Brilliant. No, I do tend to lay out a sort of a rough structure, and particularly I tend to have 5 questions. that sort of fits, and we can then spool off them, but it at least gives them, because I'm not an investigative journalist or anything like that. It's just gives us a rough structure to riff off, really. So it kind of works for me. I just feel sometimes it's a bit fairer on them that I'm not going to drop them in it. And also, if they know what's coming, then I don't need to do too much post processing. So. Oh no.
Yeah, it looks like Mateo is not going to be on. Okay. We'll
That's disappointing.
Yeah.
You just have to make do with me then.
I think it'll still be a great show, and
it will be.
We'll get to it, and we'll get through it. So for everyone watching, we're going to be right back in just 1 minute, and we'll go ahead and start this show thing. Okay, here we go. We're going to press the button now, and we'll be back in a minute.
Welcome to Human Factors Cast, your weekly podcast for human factors, psychology, and design.
Hey, what's going on, everybody? It is episode 221. We're recording this live on October 7th, 2021. This is Human Factors Cast. I'm your host, Nick Roome. I'm joined today again by Mr. Barry Kirby.
Hello, good morning, as it is in the UK, and thank you for having me on yet again. Surely you've got to get sick of me soon.
I'm not getting sicky. I love having you on the show. Speaking of the show, we got a great show for you tonight. We're going to be talking about using augmented reality in space for repairs. And later, we're going to answer some questions from the community about putting school projects on LinkedIn, the difference between contracted and permanent positions, and approaches to starting a new project to improve some skills. But first, just to go over some programming notes or community updates. This one's an exciting one for me. We now have Human Factors Minute available outside of Patreon for the first time ever. Now you can get Human Factors Minute in Spotify. We have all 84 episodes there available for you. And if you're unaware, Human Factors Minute is a separate podcast that we do that breaks down little chunks of human factors in 1 little minute bits, so you can get your kind of human factors fix for supporting the show. We'll update that on Spotify with the same cadence as our patrons. Of course, you could always pay 1 penny more and get access to Patreon stuff like Patrons Choose the News, our weekly Q&As, our full audio versions of the podcast, which include a pre and post show we do every week. I'll put a link to the Human Factors Minute and Spotify in the description of this episode, and Patreon is also down there. Also, for programming notes, HFES 2021 was this year. We usually pick up a lot of folks around conferences, and so just want to welcome everyone who might be new to the show. Welcome all you new listeners. If you were at the event, we'd love to hear from you, to kind of hear about your experience. The first time in person since 2019. So, go to our website, leave a voicemail there. There's a little microphone in the bottom right-hand corner, or you can go to, we'll leave a link in the description for a voicemail. We're going to do coverage on HFES 2021 a little later this month. There's an in-person session, which happened this week. And then there's a virtual session that's happening a little later out in the month. And we're going to try to do our conference coverage to cover both sides of things. We have some folks from our lab that went in person. We know some people that went, so we can kind of get in touch with them and see how it was like boots on the ground, so to speak. And then kind of from the perspective of the virtual event, which I will be at. But with that, I think it's time that we get into Human Factors News. Yes, this is the part of the show where we talk about everything related to the field of human factors. Barry, what's our news story this week?
So this week we talked about the new augmented reality applications that assist astronauts repair the space station. So often communication delays between the ISS and the ground are nearly unnoticeable. But as NASA prepares to explore the moon and eventually Mars, NASA is developing tools to increase astronaut autonomy to operate the spacecraft or systems without assistance because communication delays from the Earth will last longer. So the T2 Augmented Reality T2AR project demonstrates how station crew members can inspect and maintain scientific and exercise equipment critical to maintaining crew health and achieving research goals without assistance from ground teams. Astronauts in this case were tasked with maintenance for one of the space station's crew pieces of exercise equipment, the T2 treadmill. The inspection procedure is typically available as a PDF document accessed on a computer or a tablet, which can be hard to hold whilst operating tools or flashlights or examining equipment in tight spaces. This time, no extra handheld instructions or communications with the ground teams were necessary, since all information was in plain sight. They were utilizing Microsoft HoloLens augmented reality goggles, which had step-by-step guidance and cues to assist the work without referring to a separate screen. These were made available for them to use, and this project kicks off in April 2022. So, what do you think about that?
I love any story that has to deal with augmented reality. I also love stories that involve space, and this is a perfect kind of confluence of them. So there's a lot of things to love about this article, and I think we'll break it all down. I think we should talk probably about human factors issues in space and which ones apply to this specific context. Maybe some general background on augmented reality. We talk a lot about virtual reality on the show, but I feel like augmented reality, mixed reality, kind of gets kind of the bucket kicked a little bit, and so we'll do that, and then we'll get into the discussion. But I want to get your initial thoughts on this article. What are you thinking?
So I think it's really taking some of these issues that are going to be really pertinent, particularly for the Mars missions. That the really every film you see, every live stream you see from no matter who's launching, that link between what goes on in the spacecraft and the ISS and the ground stations is so interlinked that they procedurally that one can't do anything without the ground control. Giving them permission, giving them that push forward, and also checking and rechecking what they do, because it is a safety critical environment. You make a mistake there, and that's a bad day in the office. So to have, well, yeah, exactly. So having this sort of technology there that they can test, they can push together, that's going to give them the right sort of cues to do the right sort of job, and basically the actors that second set of eyes, effectively making sure that the procedures are being followed properly and having the right information. That on the first instance is brilliant. Now it's not particularly new in some respects, because there are projects that are going on on Earth that are doing some of that. So seeing some of that applied up there is really, really good. The second bit is, I think, really, really cool as well, using that headset and that augmented reality in of itself to basically reduce their workload. They're not having to hang around with PDF documents, a tablet, or whatever. The information is where they want it, where they need it, overlaying the job that they're doing, and therefore freeing up their hands to actually do the job. So on the face of it, you could see that this is actually a really simple thing, but I can see exactly with the way that the space works that this is going to be a real step change in the way that they can carry out their missions.
Oh yeah, for sure. So let's actually talk about some of the human factors issues in space, just kind of general issues, right? You mentioned it kind of briefly. They're dealing especially with maintenance tasks right now. They have PDF pamphlets that might float away from them as they're trying to do the thing. And so, thinking about basically, so I have a list here of a bunch of different stressors that the human might encounter in space, and there's a couple I think that apply more specifically towards this context. So if you're thinking about like physical stressors, obviously there's microgravity, right? There's the whole navigation issue of how do you move your body and make sure that it is moving in the way that you want it to in microgravity, because it behaves differently than you would, on planet Earth here. And so there's the physical side of it. There's also habitat. You're in this kind of environment where you might have vibration, noise, and lighting that is distracting in some instances from the tasks at hand, right? And so if you're trying to repair something, you might get distracted by vibration or noise that's happening around you, and especially because on the ISS a lot of astronauts have a set plan of tasks that they need to get through in a certain day, and so they might be working in closer proximity to you, and their task might it might distract you from yours. So you have that to deal with. You have the psychological stressors of workload. You mentioned workload, especially when it comes to a repair task, right? Managing sort of what comes next, what did I already do, where are all the pieces and parts, and kind of the cognitive workload of actually putting this thing back together. And then you have interpersonal stressors, which, generally on board the ISS, they select astronauts that will get along with each other.
Yes. Right.
But I mean, there still can be those issues of, personality clashes, culture, lack of privacy, those types of things. And I don't think that necessarily impacts the task at hand so much, but you do have those issues potentially when you're dealing with somebody from mission control. If, perhaps they are seemingly bossy to you and they're just trying to tell you what to do. I mean, thankfully the vetting process for astronauts is a little bit more rigorous than, getting a cashier at a grocery store to,
Yeah.
so there's less probably interpersonal problems that you might deal with on that level, but still something that you have to consider. Physiological stressors, so vestibular problems, you're moving around in space, and then you have performance stresses, which I think is kind of the big one here, and this is more for things like spacewalks, and we can kind of think about maybe what the future of this holds at the end of this, but you have these performance stressors like disorientation, especially if you're outside. There's a big blue marble looking at you, and you have the space station, but that's all you have for cues as to whether you're up or down. You have visual illusions going on, attention deficits, psychomotor problems, proneness to error. And so all these are critical, like you said, mission critical when it comes to repairing things on the space station. I'm glad they're starting with something not necessarily unimportant, but not mission critical. They're starting with the treadmill. Any comments on these stressors in space?
Yeah, I think for me, the two big hitters have to be the microgravity piece and the workload, because when we're talking about maintenance tasks, so there's obviously two different types of maintenance. You've got your just general upkeep of something, but then it's repairing something when it goes wrong. And so that inherently gives you a whole lot of stress, because generally something goes wrong, you weren't expecting it to go wrong. You're having to fix something, and yes, the treadmill might not be the most critical key part of equipment, but if they don't get on the treadmill, do their exercises once a day, they lose bone density, and so actually the long-term consequence of not having such a piece of equipment could be quite key. So actually, if they don't, I can just sort of see that having more stress on you, because you're having to deal with bits of kit, and they'll go on to maintaining more critical bits of kit, that could give you a level of workload and stress that you weren't anticipating. But also microgravity can play funny things with you, with the amount of force and torque you put into tightening things up. And actually, could this, and I'm asking the question, I don't know truly the answer, but could this augmented reality give you better cues about when things are tightened up enough, as opposed to over tightening things and under tightening things, and that type of cues to make sure you are taking out the right equipment. The other bit as well is it'd be interesting to see how the confirmatory side of it works. So it identifies, right, you need to take off this side panel. You take the side panel off, and does it then confirm with you that yes, you've taken off the right side panel, well done, thumbs up, or a big cross, you've unscrewed the wrong screw type of affair. So it'll be interesting to see how in that display they push them cues towards you in a more of a nudge idea. So they're nudging you on down the checklist as opposed to stressing you out by using it. So I think that side of it's quite exciting. I think some of these cues that you've highlighted, we can actually be some of them are really good for highlighting the fact that we should be reducing some of that stress, as opposed to, I do get a bit pessimistic in some things that add stresses, but actually we would like to think that some of the performance stresses might decrease because you're not having to do quite so much. You're not having to hold 3 things with only 2 hands, for example.
Yeah. So one more note from Mateo in the chat here. He says that the tasks that these astronauts do are really strictly planned, especially for sleeping, eating, exercise, and especially given sort of the circadian rhythm, sunset, sunrise happening every 90 minutes while you're in orbit. So these are also things that you have to consider sort of with those physical stressors. You kind of gave me a perfect segue and then I backed up, but let's talk about the augmented reality side of things, because I think there's a lot of things that we can bring in from industry as to what's going on right now, or kind of how the industry thinks about using augmented reality as a tool for maintenance and repair. And I think there's kind of a couple key pillars here, right? There's identifying equipment or sort of bits and pieces of equipment, and then there's also identifying problems with that equipment, and that's kind of, I think, a little bit further down the line here with at least where this specific context is, right? This on the ISS. There's also sort of retrieving that relevant augmented reality information about those parts and pieces, and then there's sort of the augmentation itself of the feed that you are seeing through your glasses in real time. There's that part of it. So let's kind of go through these one by one, right? Identifying the equipment and the parts and pieces that need to fit together or come apart in order to fix this thing. So you can imagine, you might give an object a subtle glow as, this piece needs to be removed, or this piece needs to be tightened more. And you can use color coding. And as long as that color coding is salient and understood, right? Green means good to go. Red means it's nowhere near where it should be. Yellow means you're getting close, especially with something like tightening a screw. That could be a good application. Having augmented reality on your head, basically augmenting your vision, hands-free, this is going to open up a world of possibilities, especially when you think about sort of access to what needs to happen, right? And so it basically makes all this easy, hands-free. This data is readily available at your eyeballs. And, in terms of maintenance and repair, this can really have a large impact.
Yeah, right. I mean, some of the cute things I think it could really do is if you've got something with you want to make sure that a piece of equipment is exactly the right one, so it might have its own QR code or its own its own serial number, and the ability for not only for you to check that you got it, but actually the system could check that for you as well. And you show the QR code, it does a retrieval check, and it gives you a big green tick to say yes, it's not only it looks right, but it is actually the right piece of equipment. But also, it'd be interesting to see that also linked with audio as well. To see, so if you get the if it's not the right piece of kit, you get the big extra cueing, because I think in some maintenance tasks you can rely far too much on just visual cues. So actually bringing some of that together would be really useful. But really making sure that that there's so many errors where the wrong piece of kit or the wrong type of kit is installed, that this could just circumvent so many simple errors, particularly when operators are tired, they've been working long shifts, or repetitive tasks. So there's going to be a huge step change when by using augmented reality for kit identification.
Yeah, let's talk briefly about displaying that information too, because you can also overlay perhaps a task list off to the top of the screen kind of out of the way that they can reference as like a progress bar almost. So task 1, unscrew the panel. Task 2, remove the part. Task 3, identify the new part. Task 4, place the part in and affix. And part 5, reattach the panel. And you have kind of this running list of things that you need to do, with checkboxes that say, whether or not something is completed, walk you through each step. And maybe it expands and says, hey, here's all the pieces that need to go into this task, right? Subtasks, if you will. So there's a lot of really cool ways that you can display the information. And sort of like these tips or scenario steps, or like you said, voice guided, those might actually be really helpful for trying to do something that typically was just relied on a PDF or maybe even a conversation on a radio with mission control in the past, right? So I think there's a lot of interesting things that they can get from this. Also, you have you can collect data as well. If there's cameras on board, you can see what worked and what didn't, and improve the system over time. And that's more like the data science side of things. I tend to focus more on the human factors application. How do you sort of display this information? How do you make it efficient for the operator? But I think the data side of things is cool too, right? Using QR codes, understand which parts and pieces you're looking at. How do you get that data? Where do you store it at? All that stuff is also problems that you'll have to think about, especially in a isolated environment like the ISS and eventually Mars, right? You'll need some data storage for all that stuff.
The other really interesting bit about it as well is, if we get this right, if this gets right, then actually it reduces the training burden upon the crew themselves, because they won't need to train on how to do every little thing. There'll be some obscure things, or things that maybe they don't need to do very often, or really low risk stuff that they can have a confidence of going up and having a system like this to guide them. So they'll only need to do it when they're actually having to do the task. They don't need to worry too much about overburdening themselves whilst they're on the ground.
Yeah, that's a great point. And I think that goes for a lot of things, especially some of those lesser performed tasks, but maybe mission critical.
Yeah.
And it could just make the world of a difference when you don't have to train for those things, and you just put on the headset and it tells you what to do in the moment. Even displaying information as simple as like videos with the headset on, that's like a low form of training, or a lower form of what I would call instructed maintenance, but it's still effective, right? It can still be effective if you're able to watch somebody do the task, and then actually perform the thing. When it comes to AR, right? There's obviously the functionality of overlaying all this information on our visual system, but basically, they have all this. They have video communications built into a lot of these devices, right? So they could be on the phone with mission control, and I think you mentioned this earlier. Mission control can actually be watching what they're doing live and walk them through it, and they can consult experts live in that moment via a video call. And here in low Earth orbit, that's possible. When it gets to Mars, it's a little less possible because of the delay between. But I think you test it close by, and then eventually it'll work its way out once it's kind of proven itself. I think you mentioned speech to text too, which could also be useful.
Yeah, I think anything to enable them to do the sort of that hands-free note-taking, hands-free record-keeping, that's all really useful, because I think it's interesting that the use of HoloLens isn't new in the ISS at the moment, and that was one of the things that I think confused me in the pre-show, was that they've actually had the HoloLens up there since 2015, but that has all been around what they call this sidekick, which one is, as you say, is the remote expert mode, where the ground operator can see what they're doing, or the second mode, which is a procedures mode, which allows them to step through critical procedures. But this particular use of it is the first time they've done it for actual maintenance, which I think it just shows that it's really stepping onto new territory. They're trying to push the boundaries of where this technology will go, and as you say, if we are going to get to Mars, which is certainly, if they want anybody for a Mars mission, I'm definitely front and center, and I'm quite happy to do that. Just as a small advert there. Not that I'm fit enough, light enough, or anything like to do it, but I'm very keen. But if you're going to have more and more essentially novices in space, and the ability to get people and potentially civilians who might have to carry out maintenance or any sort of activities, the only way you can really do that with any sense of confidence is by having these types of systems. So they're going to feature massively as long as the experiments like these that they're doing at the moment proves that they can actually effectively work in that environment.
Yeah, those are great points. And in fact, you brought up a good one, is that the HoloLens has been on the International Space Station since 2015. And in fact, we actually did an interview with one of the Human Factors Prize winners from HFES back in 2018, Adam Brawley. He actually talked us through what it means to use the HoloLens on the ISS. So go listen to that interview if you haven't already. I will say, taking a step back, let's look at some examples of augmented reality repair and maintenance in industry, right? So you have companies like Bosch repairing automotive vehicles. And some of the metrics around these are really impressive too, right? So you have this 15% fixed time decrease for simple car repairs. You have Huawei repairing DC to AC solar power inverters, reporting a significant decrease in technicians' cognitive load and a service time decrease. And, in industry, it's a little bit more challenging because you have sort of these pushback from employees trying to get used to this stuff. But ultimately, the results kind of show themselves, right? They have good results here. And I think, this is the future. And the ISS is kind of a good test bed for this kind of technology.
Yeah, it is. I mean, that the employee resistance, I think, is a hurdle we've got to get over. I've encountered that with trying to push new technologies into things like the military domain, particularly into specialist domains where you've only got a few specialist operators can do job X, Y, Z. And I think astronauts does fall into that. It's a very tight skill. You have to be a very good fast jet pilot before you go and do it, etc., etc. And where I've seen some new technologies come in and to make people's lives easier, they can have a reaction to, well, hold on, that very complex job was my job and I'm the only person who knew how to do it. You're putting me out of a job. And actually, where really what we're doing is, no, it's not. We're trying to help you do, make your job safer. We're trying to free you up to do yet more other things. But sometimes you can get that resistance because you think that you're taking away their specialism, their reason for being. So.
Yeah, I don't know how much else I have to say about this. I think it's really cool to see, this move into the maintenance repair domain within the ISS and to kind of see it really take off, pun intended. Do you have any other things to add to this story before we kind of get out of here and get to the next part?
Well, I think the only thing I would say is that if anybody wants us to go and actually go up to the ISS and see this in action, just for the, just to make sure our integrity is in the story is right, then please do give us a shout because I'm free this weekend.
Yeah, perfect. Exactly. We'll take it to space. I think we got to earn a little bit more Patreon dollars before we can afford a trip up there, though. But anyway,
it'll be fine.
Huge thank you to our patrons this week for selecting our topic. And thank you to our friends over at Science X Network and NASA for our news story this week. If you want to follow along, you can join me on Office Hours every Monday where I find these news stories. And we do post the links to all the original articles on our weekly roundups in our blog. You can also join us on our Slack or Discord for more discussion on these stories. We're going to take a quick break and then we'll be back to see what's going on in the Human Factors community right after this.
Human Factors Cast brings you the best in human factors news, interviews, conference coverage, and overall fun conversations into each and every episode we produce. But we can't do it without you. The Human Factors Cast Network is 100% listener supported. All the funds that go into running the show come from our listeners. Our patrons are our priority, and we want to ensure we're giving back to you for supporting us. Pledges start at just $1 per month and include rewards like access to our weekly Q&As with the hosts, personalized professional reviews, and Human Factors Minute, a Patreon-only weekly podcast where the hosts break down unique, obscure, and interesting human factors topics in just 1 minute. Patreon rewards are always evolving, so stop by patreon.com/humanfactorscast to see what support level may be right for you. Thank you, and remember, it depends.
Yes, huge thank you, as always, for paving our way to the International Space Station, buying us a ticket there, especially our honorary Human Factors cast staff, patrons Michelle Tripp. Patrons like you keep the show running. Thank you all so much for your continued support. If you want to become a patron, that's easy for you to do. It's only a couple bucks. If you want to get Human Factors Minute, you can donate as little as $1 and as much as $300 if that's something that you want to do. Anyway, with the whole Twitch leak earlier this week, I thought it'd be a good time to reveal how much we make. It's not much. It's like $59 a month. So, we're not making thousands of dollars like some of those streamers are. So with that, that money all gets fed back into the show and we don't make a cent off of it. I think we're still in the hole. Anyway, I think it's time for us to switch gears and get into this next part of the show.
It came from...
Yes, it came from. This week, it's all Reddit. This is the part of the show where we search all over the internet to bring you topics that the community is talking about. If you find these answers useful, give us a like to help other people find this content. We got 3 tonight. One from the Human Factors subreddit, one from the HCI subreddit, and one from the User Experience subreddit. So we're getting from multiple communities this week. This first one here is going to be from Dicons on the HCI subreddit. This is how to put school company HCI projects in LinkedIn. They go on to write, hello, I am currently an HCI master's program, and we have been working with 2 major companies in one of my classes. I would like a way to include this in LinkedIn somehow, or by extension portfolio. That's me expanding on that. Is there any way to do this, or is this not good practice? I'm thinking of adding it under projects. Please let me know. Barry, have you dealt with this before?
So yes and no. When I've done a project as part of my degree, then yes, I had that was part of I had an external sponsor who wanted to play with that, and so we could put that on my LinkedIn. There's a couple of things to look at. If it was just a straight school project that everybody else is doing in your class and nothing truly makes it unique, I would suggest probably not. You want to stay away from that. However, this has got an external a company involved, so there's an element of they wouldn't be doing that if there wasn't some sort of requirement around it, and so put it in there as a project. Don't disguise it, to try not to make it more than what it is. So highlight that it's a joint school company project, but also highlight in there as well why you think it's different, why what you've done is a bit more and is worthy. The reason for doing that, I think, is particularly you probably won't have many other projects or examples of your work under your belt at this point. And one of the things that a lot of companies are always crying out for, and it seems to be a classic, and it is a bit irritating if I'm honest, where they want people who've just come straight out of university, but we want to have loads of experience.
10 years experience.
Yes, but also we want to pay you like you're still an undergraduate. So if you've got experiences like this that have a certain amount of validity, yes, put them into LinkedIn. Put them under the project piece, under the project segment, and maybe even highlight them under some of your career highlights. What do you think, Nick?
Yeah, this one, there's a couple nuanced things here that I think are important to discuss, right? This person asks if it's a good practice. I think it can be. The thing I would caution against is if you've signed an NDA that says you cannot talk about this information, you're going to have to disguise that pretty good. I would still say that you've partnered with that company to say that you have that experience, but trying to dance around a specific product that you might not be able to talk about until it's public is going to be difficult. And so there's a whole skill involved with that. And I think there's plenty of resources out there for how to deal with a portfolio that you can't necessarily share, like working with, in a classified domain or working under NDA. There's resources out there. So that's one consideration. Another consideration too is be sure to be clear about what your responsibility on this project was. Chances are, if it is sort of for a class, there's going to be a lot of people with their hands on this, and so the what was your contribution to it might get masked by that. And so be prepared to speak about your contribution when you talk about this work in an interview or on your portfolio. And I think that is a large part of it. In terms of what you share, I would say document everything. Maybe don't share everything. Document everything that you do work on projects with, even if it is just a low level classroom assignment, right? If it's, I don't know, a task analysis on something, document that. I wouldn't share like a task analysis project on LinkedIn as a professional thing, but it's a skill set that you have and you've documented it and you can talk about it in an interview or, in a situation where you need to prove your knowledge on something. And just having that repository of skills is always something that I recommend. Like for example, I still have, when I was in my undergrad, I worked with ketamine and rodents. And so I still have that, kind of in my back pocket. And if that ever comes up, I have that skill set and I know I can talk about it. But it's not something that I publicize, right? It's unless it's in the context of right now. So document everything, because you never know when those skills will come in handy that you want to put on a resume or something like that. Any closing thoughts on this one, Barry?
Yeah, I think just to follow up what you said there, when people are looking at this sort of thing on LinkedIn, we're more interested in the how, not the what. So, I work a lot in defense, and it's a problem I have now. What can I put on my website that we can do? But it's more about the skills and the technologies that you can use and apply. Is the key thing really that you want to get out there. And I did think we'd be talking about ketamine tonight. That's brought me out different places.
There we go. All right, so let's get into this next one here. This one's exciting, and this one actually comes from the Human Factors subreddit. I think this is a really interesting point of discussion. This is contract versus permanent positions. They write, "Hello, I'm a recent graduate with a Human Factors Master's and a bachelor's in psychology with a research focus. I've completed an internship in medical device consulting, have TA'd graduate courses in Human Factors, and been a research assistant as well. I've been applying to jobs broadly. I recently went and applied to UX research position that was advertised by a prominent laboratory equipment company in the Northeast USA. This was labeled as a permanent full-time position with benefits, 80K salary. Luckily, I was called for interviews. I went through 4 rounds of interviews with the company and received positive feedback at each gate. I was asked to meet with the team today to discuss the opportunity available. So I believed I was about to enter offer negotiations with the employer. However, upon entering the meetings, I was told that I was a star applicant, interviewed well, and they wanted me on the team with one catch. The position I applied for was now to be filled internally, and I would be offered a contract position until December 31st. And right now, as of this recording, it's October 7th, with no guarantee of permanent employment beyond that. Has anyone experienced this in the job search? Is it that I did not perform well in the interviews despite the good feedback? If they wanted to hire internally, why post the job to external job sites and have me go through interview process only to revoke the position? I don't know what to think. Like I said, I'm a recent grad, so I'm not sure if this is common practice or alludes to some red flags of this employer. I'd love any insight you may have. Thank you." This one's a long one. Barry, I want to get your thoughts on this. So there's a couple things here, right? There's they were a star interviewee. They were offered the position and then they rescinded it because or maybe didn't rescind it, but they rescinded the position because they filled it internally. And then let's talk about contract versus permanent positions. I think there's a couple things there.
Yeah, so the whole position being filled internally, that just screams internal company politics. That I wouldn't take that personally if I was you. That is stuff that happens, I think, fairly regularly. It is easier to hire, or it is more beneficial to the company to hire internally, and there might just be some HR drive, or there might be some senior decision that has made that happen. the fact that they've had really good feedback all the way through, and they still want to go with them and have a contract position until December 31st. That's kind of what they do with that is kind of up to them. I've been in that position myself, and I sort of did it, and I turned it down, and I said, if you want me, you want me. Maybe I was arrogant and young and carefree. But if it's a job that you really, really like, then actually, if like I say, it's October now, couple of months worth of work to show where, that could almost be as good as you or them anyway. It could give you that experience. In the grand scheme of things, no job, even with a permanent contract, no job is worth more than a month's notice. So, there is that sort of element around it. So I wouldn't take it necessarily too personally, and I would leave it really much down to you. Do you want to spend 2 months doing a job that might not lead anywhere else, but it could give you a couple of months worth of salary and some more experiences to take you onto that next role? So that's kind of my thoughts around that. The difference between contract and permanent positions, and I think this has slightly different connotations around the world as well. So I've done contract roles, I've done and I've had permanent roles as well. And certainly in the UK, having the permanent positions, it's great if you want stability. If you want things like your holiday, your sick pay, all that sort of stuff, then that's great. Permanent positions are really good, and they give you that feeling of longevity. Whereas contract positions, if you can be more mobile, if you're wanting to try out different companies, try and work with different projects on a wide variety of projects, actually contracts can be really good. And they also give you an ability to go and try something and walk away with much lesser hard feelings, because contractors are slightly more easy come, easy go. In the UK, we are going through this thing called, which everybody will love if you're in the UK, called IR35, which means that the ability to get contract positions just to do the manpower type roles is much harder. So that is going to become much rarer in the UK. But how does it work over in the US? Is it any different?
A little bit. Let's break this down. So I agree with mostly what you said, and I think let's talk about this piece by piece, right? So there's you were a star interviewer, and they still offered you a position, and it's for a couple months. And I think, Barry, you actually even changed my mind on approaching this, because you're right. If this person is just out of college, it's a great thing to get into, at least to start building that portfolio and getting into industry, getting your hands dirty. They didn't necessarily say that it would be a continued position, but if you are looking for jobs, you could still look for jobs on top of doing work and getting experience. And I know that's a lot of work, but if you are just out of school, chances are you're young, not necessarily. Chances are you're early in your career, and so you're willing to take more risk. And just because you take the job with one company doesn't mean that you can't keep looking. And so I think that's a good way to think about it, right? You're getting your hands dirty, you're getting experience, and you're still looking for more. And approaching it from that way is something that I wouldn't have recommended before hearing Barry talk. So thank you. I would have been like, oh, if you don't have time for me, then don't, is it worth it? No. But I think you've changed my mind on that. So let's talk about contracted versus permanent positions. There's a couple ways this works in the US. You have contracts that hire individual contractors. You have contracts that hire companies that have people at them, and then you have sort of these permanent positions. And so when you think about you as kind of a lone freelance contractor, this is the most scary you can get, right? There's not that stability, but like Barry was mentioning, there is a lot of variety, and you could jump from one project to another, sort of build up your experience. And there's sort of the middle step where if you work at a contracting agency or a human factors agency that accepts a bunch of different contracts, you can jump from project to project, and chances are they'll have something lined up for you that matches your skill set and experience that you can then, you'll still bounce from contract to contract, but it's kind of like the middle ground of getting that, the benefits, 401k, all that stuff at a company. It's still a little scary, though, because your business is still driven by your work. Not like it's not anywhere, but there's a little bit more risk involved than if you were to have a permanent position with like a big tech company that has all these infinite resources that they can keep paying people to, come on. Anyway, so that I think is a safe middle ground. And then you have sort of the permanent positions where you're a very specialized role at a company and you're working on the same product for a very long time. It does offer that longevity. And I think it really depends on where you're at in your career. I would say, for early career professionals, I'd almost recommend going to human factors or design agency that accepts a lot of different contracts, getting your experience with many different types of projects in hopefully different industries. But I think just in terms of, what I would prefer, I'm at a point in my life now. I have a young child and a wife that depend on me to bring in income. So I'm looking for something a little bit more stable. And so that contract to contract, I've done both. And that contract to contract life is a little bit more risky. And I think we've actually talked about this on the show before, but I mean, as you build contacts, as you make your network broader, there are going to be more opportunities for you. If a contract ran out, there are a bunch of people I could reach out to and say, hey, I need work. And chances are they would have something available or they'd make something work because I know people now, right? And that wouldn't have been the case 10 years ago. So that's something to consider. As you get older, though, you might want to get more in that. I don't know. It does depend, because if you feel like you have more networks and that's something that you enjoy, jumping from thing to thing, then you could totally do that. If you feel like you have enough security, or if your spouse is the primary breadwinner or something, however you want to justify it, right? I think there's it's all a calculation of risk, and that's something that you need to take into account. But I think in this case, you should totally do it. That's. Anything else?
Yeah, it just made. I was just listening to the way that you evaluated where you should do contract, and I sort of did the other way around, because I started off in the big companies, and then after we'd had a third child, and I decided to go it alone, just because I could after a night out at the pub. So yeah, that was interesting. But the only other small thing nuance with that is, I mean, we're assuming that this company is quite a large company, and I think that the whole premise of it says that it's there's internal politics and all that sort of stuff. If it's a very small company trying to play this trick, then walk away. That is that they are trying to mess you around, and they either can't afford to keep you for at least a 6-month period, or they don't know quite what they're doing. So if it's a very small company trying to play the trick, then that would send up alarm bells for me.
Yeah, that's a good point. All right, let's get into this last one here. Beginner UX project. This one's by I Love Moose on the user experience subreddit. Hi, guys. I want to undertake my first project and try to improve my skills throughout the UI and UX process. I want to know if you start a project by thinking of a problem first that needs solving, or if you just carry out user research on existing products to identify problems. I'm asking because I have my own pain points with certain apps, but I don't know how I would fit the user research around it, as the problem would be defined already. In the case that I find my own problems, do I first present my personal pain points in the project and then try to justify it through user research? If not, how would you suggest I go about starting the UX project in this case? So I'm sensing a couple questions here. There's one: how do I approach a project? How do I build my skills? And how do I sell what I've done? Right? I think those are kind of the three major questions here. Barry, take it away.
I was kind of hoping you wouldn't do that. This is an interesting one, isn't it? Because I interpret this as they are trying to develop their own skills, and they want to be able to have a project, and therefore to use as almost a showcase so that they can do their skills. So fundamentally, you go with what you know. If you know that there's two things you can do. You can either start a project from scratch. And so that would be the equivalent of a client walking in or a customer walking in and saying, I need one of these. I don't know quite what it is, but I need this piece of this app or this something that does X. And so then you're going to go and do that research, aren't you, into the exploration with the client. And if you think effectively you're the client at that point, start sketching out what they're trying to achieve, what the requirements are, etc., etc. If you want to do something, so that is showing you how you would launch a project, how you take something from scratch and develop something from nothing all the way through to an app, or a design for an app. The other part of what's been highlighted is how do you troubleshoot an app, or whatever it is. I'll say it's an app in this case. And so how do you evaluate what is already there? How do you get the client feedback, the user feedback into what other people's pain points are? Just because we as operators, just because we as HF experts see pain points that we would identify doesn't necessarily mean that we're right. I'm normally right, but not all of us as HF practitioners are right all the time. And so it's about, so that is a different skill. It's a different ability to be able to go and see what somebody else has produced, break it down into things like cognitive walkthroughs, etc., work out what it is that app was created to do, and does it meet that need? And also, has the as the focus shifted, does the app was created to do one thing, but does it now fulfill another function, and therefore could be grown in that way? So you want to choose projects, you want to choose them sort of things that develop your own skills. So identify, a bit of self-reflection is needed. So where are you strong, where are you weak, what do you need practice in doing? Practice the stuff that it's easy to go and say, actually I'm very good at this, I'll do another one of these, and we'll write that up and look and show how great I am at, say, task analysis or something like that. Find stuff that you don't like doing. If it's for your own stuff, put yourself into an uncomfortable position, and flex those uncomfortable muscles, because they will become big and strong in the end.
Yeah, let's. I want to talk about this because this is such an interesting question, and something I know a lot of people struggle with, especially as they are starting their careers off and they want to develop things for their portfolio. And I think there's two ways of really approaching how do you select a project for you, like a pet project for you to work on that you can use for your portfolio. And I see it two ways, right? There's one, you are embedded into a community already. Like, let's say it's for a video game or something with a very vocal community, right? I'm using video games as an example because those communities typically are very vocal about what they want. And the development teams may already be working on those things, but it's something that you can at least back with data that is a user requested feature, function, or whatever you want to call it. And so, spending time on subreddits about a specific game and saying, hey, this would be 1,000,000 times better. Then you go back and you source all those comments and say, here's the problem space. Here's the users that are defining this problem space. And I'm going to go out and solve it, whether it's a design for product. I wouldn't have access to the source code or anything like that, but you could at least design a solution that would be based on user feedback. And I think that is probably the most sound way of approaching a problem, because then you have that user data to back your claim that this thing needs fixing. There's the weaker argument of, I don't like how this functions in this app, and therefore I am going to fix it to match my own needs, because that's not user driven, that is you driven. And, like Barry said, you can be right, but you don't have that data to back it up. And especially if you're earlier on in your career, you might want to have that user data to say, look, I went out to the community to see what was going on with this thing. There was a problem that needed solving, and I solved it. That's kind of the approach that I would take. If there's, a product that you're passionate about, browse the forums, browse whatever, because there's probably someone complaining about something. And sometimes even forums will have these help tickets that say, I want this feature, or feature requests, and a lot of times they'll be voted on, and so you can see how many people want that thing, and that's a great starting point for projects, exploring those products, right? So, like, I think Discord even has them, right? You can have, like, I want this integration with this tool. What does that look like? Well, you can go out and solve it, or at least what it might look like final product. So I think that's a good way of approaching it. I'm and then talking about your work is a whole separate thing that we've touched on a million times. I think that's a separate question. I don't know. Anything else to add to this one?
Yeah, just processes. It's not, again, we kind of touched on it earlier. It's not about the output in this case. It's about you having the skills to be able to go through the right processes to show that you've got the experience and confidence. So make it all about that.
Yeah, I agree. All right, let's get into this last part of the show called "One More Thing." It needs no introduction. It's just where we talk about one more thing. Barry, what's your one more thing this week?
Well, last week I had a limb chopped off. Or it
Oh,
felt
no.
like I had a limb chopped off. It's when WhatsApp and Facebook and LinkedIn and Messenger all went down. And it was really weird because it was the first time I've been away on business in a hotel, since the pandemic, and I was going to a new client site and all this sort of stuff. And I was very excited and chatting to my better half and that. And then suddenly everything started to go down. And it was really interesting. From that perspective, but it's a lot of companies in particular have been using WhatsApp as a primary means of communication, and the amount of in the UK we had the practitioners in our National Health Service and things saying, I can't talk to the rest of my teams because WhatsApp's down, or a lot of companies are not having the redundancy in place because there are other communication channels out there that we've come to rely on one group of instant messaging or messaging tools and things together to make that work. The other interesting bit about it was that when it come to light about what had happened is that Facebook used Facebook for absolutely everything.
Mhm.
And the way that they had to solve it was literally go and get a guy with an angle grinder, because the server rooms were locked because they used Facebook to lock the doors and do all that sort of thing. And so they ended up having to use an angle grinder to get in to be able to reset everything. So a lot of people had a lot of pain and felt like they'd had a part of their consciousness ripped away for a whole, was it 6 or 7 hours or whatever it was that it was down.
Yeah, it's interesting how different parts of the world reacted to that, because I'd say about half the states were like, "Oh my gosh, I can't do anything. I can't read about the microchips and vaccines or anything like that." And the
Yeah.
other half was like, "Oh, Facebook's down." And I
Yeah.
was definitely in the, "Oh, it's down. Okay." But I mean, it's incredible because you're right. WhatsApp is used worldwide, and it's especially used for international communication a lot of the time, because there's not any of the like fees associated with using your cell phones or anything like that. So, it's a huge deal. Despite me saying, "Oh, it's down," I didn't even realize. So,
Yeah, there was
um,
an interesting other knock on as well. So I use Telegram quite a lot, and obviously and most people then jumped on Twitter, and them systems started to quake
yeah.
because of the increased usage. Though Twitter, I think, played an absolute blinder in some of their social media coverage, because whoever was on their social media desk that night deserves a medal, because some of the stuff that they were pumping out, and a lot of the other companies were jumping on board as well. So some of the threads that you that are on there are well worth going back and having a look at, because there was some absolute stars.
Oh man, yeah. It was a crazy week for tech, right? Because that happened Tuesday, Monday? It happened earlier this week.
Yeah.
And
For us.
yeah, it's Tuesday night and for you, and Tuesday morning for us. And then Wednesday you had the big Twitch leak that, revealed salaries of all these popular streamers, and huge data compromise. It's a pretty big deal, and so like it's been a crazy week in tech. But yes, I agree. The person who writes the Twitter recaps is definitely needs a promotion. I think they've done a great job.
What's your one more thing this week?
Yeah, my one more thing is this. It's this little indie television show called Squid Game. I don't. Have you heard of it?
I've heard of it. I've watched one episode of it, but it was one of those things that I sort of had it on in the background, and I think I need to give it some. I need to give it some love. I need to actually watch it properly, and I can't just watch it out of the corner of my eye. So have you been watching it?
So I finished it. I'll try to avoid spoilers best I can. I won't spoil it. Don't worry. If not, just skip ahead like 3 minutes or something. I promise I won't spoil it, but you never know. Anyway, so we've been watching this because, my wife mentioned it to me, and she said a lot of people have been talking about it, and I hadn't heard about it. Probably because I had been like off of my news apps for like a couple days, and apparently it's this big worldwide phenomenon. Everyone's excited about it. And I thought it was okay. And there's like a lot of hype around it. I thought it was okay. It was good. But my wife had given me the heads up. She said it's like a battle royale, and that's all I needed to hear for me to tune out immediately, or not tune out immediately. I was tuned in, but to shut myself off emotionally from the characters, put it that way, because certain characters die, and I don't think that's a spoiler. It's revealed in the first episode that a lot of people so certain people die, and I intentionally distanced myself from those characters, from everyone, because I was like, if I don't, I'm going to be an emotional wreck. And and sure enough, my wife didn't, and she was an emotional wreck.
Oh no.
Anyway, all that to be a warning. If you watch Squid Game, don't get invested in the characters. I think that will serve your emotion, or you know what, do it. I don't know. Emotion is human, so do what you want. It saved me some tears, though. I will say that.
Fair enough. So if she was an emotional wreck, did you do the whole comforting thing and make sure she was okay, or were you more of the I told you so, you shouldn't have got invested?
That one. I was more gloaty. I was like, I'm really glad I didn't get emotionally invested. Look at you, you're a mess. I love my wife, don't get me wrong.
That's not the way to get ahead. You realize that?
It is not.
Just some personal advice here. Having for however many years we've been married, I should know that. And I found out a while ago that's not the way to get ahead in life.
Yeah, no, I know. It was more of a playful thing. Don't worry. Anyway, I think that's going to be it for today, everyone. If you like this episode, we do invite you to check out our interview with Adam Brawley from HFES 2018, where we talked to him about his Human Factors Prize research on using augmented reality aboard the ISS. And comment wherever you're listening with what you think of the story this week. For more in-depth discussion, you can join us on our Slack or Discord communities. You can always visit our official website, sign up for our newsletter, stay up to date with all the latest Human Factors news. If you like what you hear, you want to support the show, you can leave us a 5-star review, tell your friends about us, or consider supporting us on Patreon, or even Human Factors Minutes, now available everywhere on Spotify. It's kind of out there. Anyway, as always, links to all of our socials on our website are in the description of this episode. I want to thank Mr. Barry Kirby for filling in again. Where can our listeners go and find you if they want to talk about augmented reality?
You can find me on Twitter at BAZ_K, or you can find me on the 1202 Human Factors podcast and any podcast directory near you.
As for me, I've been your host, Nick Roome. You can find me streaming on Twitch every Monday from 4 to 5 p.m. Pacific for office hours, and across social media at Nick_Roome. Thanks again for tuning in to Human Factors Cast. Until next time, it depends. All right. If you are hanging out with us, give us a minute, and we will get the post show started. There we go. Got the music going. Mateo says, Squid Game equals gore fest with a twisted tale of morality. I just watched a YouTube recap of the season. Back to the space Lego for me. Good job, guys. Thank you, Mateo. Really appreciate you.
I'm really jealous of that space Lego. I want one of them.
Barry, you said you wanted to talk about that. I guess we could talk about it, but I'd rather Mateo here, but that's okay. We can talk about the space Lego. Are you a big Lego fan?
Yeah, I can be. I certainly was as a kid. But I now want to get some, when you just want to get your teeth stuck into a large Lego project and do a bit of building. I want to get some of the big projects. So when I saw Mateo's birthday present, I had a certain level of jealousy that I think being able to build them would be pretty awesome.
Look, see, I love Lego. The thing I don't like about Lego, there's two things I don't like about Lego. One, I don't like stepping on Lego.
I was going to say standing on a bit. Yeah, that's just painful.
And two, I just never know where to store it. Like you build it, and then it's like, okay, well, I have to find a place to display this thing. Otherwise, it's like, you built it, and I think there is some fun in the building process, but then once you've built it, it's done. And I know there are several like apps or whatever that allow you to sign up for a trade, right? So like you basically trade on your Lego to the next person and somebody else trades you theirs. So that way you can keep building it. You disassemble it, you put all the pieces back to how they were, and then you ship it off to the next person. and all you require is like one sort of Lego set that's desired to start, right?
I think this is the growing up bit, though, isn't it? Though it depends what you did as a kid, because as a kid I used to get the bit of Lego, I'd build it into whatever it is, and then it would go into the big box of Lego. And so then you'd build whatever it is you wanted to build, and I would build all sorts of stuff. Whereas now, as I got accused of being an adult the other day, which was a bit weird, but that's when you build something, and you're right, you build it, and you're like, I built this now, I should show this up. It needs a cabinet, it needs a shelf or a ledge to go on. And so I've got in our office, we've got I've got a jet, and then we've also got a 4x4 big truck thing, which is my son's. Although I had to build it for him, obviously, just to help. But I've seen a couple of things out that have come out at the moment that I quite fancy a bit of a play with. It's quite good fun going to the Legoland as well, the Lego theme park.
Oh yeah,
they're a great day out as well.
Oh yeah, well yeah. So I lived very close to the one in California for a while, and family member worked there for a little bit, and so they'd get us in, and it was just one of those situations where it's like you go in and you're like, oh man, I'm glad I didn't pay for this, because it's great for kids, and we didn't have kids at the time, and so it's like, it was one of those things where it's like, oh, this would be so cool with a kid, and it's so not as an adult. But I don't know. It might just be the one in Carlsbad. But like,
one of the best things we did for my wife's birthday one year was we went to Legoland. We took the kids, but we went to stay in the Legoland hotel, and the whole setup inside it was just fantastic. Then the kids had to go and search around the room for the different packs of Lego and all that sort of stuff. It was I'd thoroughly recommend it. It was annoying to a certain extent that they had to be there as well, but it's good fun. Mateo's just saying
the
Lego
Technic and Mindstorm. Yeah,
that's I've never done that. I've never done the whole programming with the Mindstorms bit. I do love a bit of Technic, but I quite fancy having to go with the programming stuff.
So when I was a kid, the Technic and Mindstorm, I remember, was just taking off as I was kind of in that age group where like it would be of interest, and it was just right around the time where schools were starting to form these Lego Mindstorm Technic groups, and I just kind of missed it by a little bit, and I really wish I hadn't. I had pieces, and I remember distinctly like making things with a motorized Lego bit, like a motorized gear, and that was a ton of fun. But if I had sort of a class or resources available to me, I could have made so many cooler things, and may have actually gone the engineering route instead of the psychology route to get to human factors.
Yes, that's fair play. The other thing I like, so a really good friend of mine, he likes his Lego, but he likes his Star Wars Lego, and he's literally got a room in his house dedicated to Star Wars Lego, and so he does get that little medal for just going the extra mile with it.
Yeah, I mean, so in my mid-20s is when I bought a bunch of Star Wars Lego sets, and that's what I was talking about, is like, I have nowhere to display all these.
Yes, yeah.
Because I was like, bouncing between my parents' house and grad school, and then, eventually they all ended up in a tub, and I was like, okay, well, I mean, I guess they're there, and I could rebuild them if I want, but now they're still in that. I still have that tub. And ultimately what I decided is that they're going to get disassembled and decommissioned, and they'll be my son's toys here in a couple years. And
that's a great
I think that is better than displaying them on the shelf personally. It took a lot for me to get to that point. It was a journey.
I was going to say it's a very emotional and personal journey that you've been on to get to that decision.
It's why I wasn't emotionally invested in Squid Game, is because my emotions were burnt out by.
See, my parents ruined my childhood by I said I had all this Lego and stuff, and then I was like, oh no, I've now got children, and they must have kept all that Lego because it was obviously worth a lot of money, because it was like boxes of the stuff, and they'd sold it on a local car boot sale.
Oh no!
I said, "Oh, can I have the Lego to give to my kids?" And they're like, "Well, no." Obviously, I was like, oh, you just ruined my life.
See, we had something very similar happen to us, although it was, we moved across country this way, and so we stopped by my parents' house right before we moved, and I was looking at all through my childhood toys and everything, and I was like, oh man, it'd be great to have this. And I found this big tub of Legos, and I was like, oh man, that'd be so cool to have. But I was really getting concerned with how much we were putting into the truck and whether or not we'd have space. And so I ultimately made the decision to leave it. And I mean, it's a good thing. We had some room left, but it's just one more box.
Yes.
So much stuff already. Anyway, speaking of Lego, the Bob from I Like to Make Stuff, he did a video today on Lego. He created a little table. So with all these compartments that you can store Lego in, it's really a great design.
Oh, cool! Like a maker table, effectively.
Sorry, say again.
Well, like a maker table, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. It's basically a table. It's like a workspace table, and he has this really cool, he built in a little side panel so that way you can kind of sweep the Lego off, and it falls through these filters of varying sizes, so it kind of filters the Lego by size, and you just twist it and it goes down into the bucket, and you put another bucket down, you twist the next layer, it goes down, and it's pretty cool design. I like to make stuff on YouTube. He did a great job with that, and I think it could be used for anything, right? Electronics table or whatever, which a workspace table, which with all those bins, I think is really the key. The storage aspect of it is interesting to me, because I save everything from. I've talked to Blake about this. I save trash because I'm not a hoarder. Let me put it that way. I don't save all trash. I save trash that looks interesting and that I feel like I could put on projects. Like, what do I have that I can show you? So, here. Well, so this. Yeah. Here, I'll show you this one. So this here is this is a bearing from something, and this is an old hard drive, old hard drive motor. But together it looks like a Star Wars panel.
It does.
So I just save trash like that. And then there's, up in the top left there, you can see that I'm pointing to is a Simply juice lid with an old light plug in it, and it looks like an interface. And so it's just
nice
saving trash.
No, absolutely. I'm loath to throw things away that they might be useful. So like cables and stuff like that. Because just when you throw a certain set of cables or something like that away, then it will be the time that you're like, I need, you just get taken away in the trash, and then you realize that you do actually need it. So yeah, I completely get that, but I'm not as creative as you are. Though my son would like a lot of that. He's getting very much into the cosplay.
Oh, okay, yeah.
He's very much into making not only his costumes and stuff, which he does from scratch. So he's very much into building it, making his like sort of Spider-Man and Red Hood and all that sort of stuff. But he'll actually. Okay, part of a box just fell over. There we go. But he'll make like all of like the guns and stuff that go with it out of everyday things that he's got. So yes, he's very much in a similar position.
Yeah, it reminds me of like saving the cardboard tube and the cardboard tube from the toilet paper and the cardboard from a box, and like slapping it together for a school project when you were in elementary school.
Yeah, well, because we have like sort of fancy dress parties as well, so we sort of keep that sort of stuff because that's always useful, right? So we'll keep all that sort of stuff. So when we decide what the theme of the next party is going to be, so we're doing it at the moment because we've got Halloween coming up, and so we started to put things together for that. So keep us entertained.
Yeah, trash, man, trash.
Well, the other thing I like to do. So, have you ever watched the Forged with Fire or Forged in Fire, where they make swords and knives and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah,
it is. I'm completely addicted to that program, and seeing they make, when they come and sort of say, right, you just build a knife, fine, okay, they build a knife, but when they come and say, right, you've got all this bit of junk or whatever it is, and you've got to build an amazing knife out of something that was that you've got to take to bits and work out what and all that sort of stuff. That's and build handles out of old bits of leather and stuff. I think that's quite good fun to watch.
Yeah, there was an old YouTube channel. I think it was called like Master of Arms or Master at Arms or something like that, where they built like they built well-known weapons that you might find, on like a television show. It looks like they got picked up by Discovery. They used to be a YouTube channel. I think they got picked up by Discovery.
Okay.
Looks like. But they're great. They do a great job. I mean, it's all from scratch, or from metal anyway. And then there's a guy who, like, on YouTube, he takes like recycled cans and he makes coins and just random casts on out of recycled metal.
Mateo's suggesting we go to the Knife Association show in Perth next year.
Oh, that'll put me on a list.
In fact, I'm tempted to see what that looks like, because that could be quite good fun.
Yeah. See, okay, so Restream is interesting about the interface, because if you hover over something somebody said, it gives you like the show option, which then brings up that message to show everybody. And so if somebody shares a link, you can't click on it, which is a bummer. And there's got to be a way to, like, I don't know. I feel like that'd be a great way to. There's a problem space. That's something that I'm coming up with right now. But I don't know if Restream users. Actually, I'm curious. We should probably check. Would you be down for like a quick exercise of it doesn't have to be anything fancy, just like a quick little check on like, what's a program you enjoy using, right? We both use Discord. We could do Discord forums.
Yeah, that's true.
So this is for anyone who to answer that that it came from that we had earlier. It was about finding a problem to work on. Discord suggestions, feature request feedback. Yeah, let's try that. So there's the support Discord. So first off, there's where do you find this stuff? And I know there's a place. Yeah, here you go. So let's check this out, right? So let me share my screen with you all. I'll minimize us down there in that corner, and I'll actually get rid of this so you can see my mug. All right, so you can actually look at these by category, right? This is the Discord support site. And so you could almost check out any support site that you'd want. And for any topic, you can almost find some interesting requests or feature requests or something like that, right? So take your pick, whatever interests you, right? So what interests you, Barry? Let's take a look at this.
Voice and video.
Voice and video. Let's look at that. Now, this is normally sorted by new, but you can sort by votes. And this is what I'm talking about. This is data-driven requests from users.
Yeah.
So right here, you can see the top request is they want screen share sound support for Linux. So as you're on Discord and you're sharing your screen, there's no sound there. And I think that's probably a bug. And there's not much to work off of there. But a lot of times, if you were to click on one of these, right, here's the second one, 459 votes. You can click on this. You can you can see this one here, stage channels, video chat, and screen sharing. At this very moment, channels seem already very restricted as I cannot share my screen. It would open the use of stage channels a lot more and make them versatile. So I don't know exactly what that means yet, you could read through some of the comments.
Yeah.
And see how many people agree with it. You have all this data right here. That's what I'm talking about, the data for trying to find problems. Hide self-view and video call. Here's a really simple use case that you could look. Hide self-view and video call. So I'm assuming that as you're on a call with somebody else, you want to hide what you look like from yourself. And so this is something that has a very clearly defined problem. You can very clearly come up with an example of what this might look like in the implementation. You can read here. For example, when I'm in a video call and I have the video feed on pop-up mode, I'd like to be able to see the person's feed without seeing my own camera feed in the corner. I want to hide my camera feed from myself without disabling my camera. So far, I found no way to actually hide my own camera. You can see this is the third most requested feature on Discord's site. So what this might look like is, as you're in a Discord call, maybe just putting like a little eyeball icon in the bottom right-hand corner that shows or hides, or like a little minimize or something that shows or hides your little self feed. And there you go. That's a solution right there. We've just kind of walked through it.
It's an interesting one, isn't it? Because this is such a clever move now that is so common through large things where they can basically build their own backlog just without putting any effort in, because everybody, with the simple voting system, then we go and do all that hard work for them, and they go, well, we need to improve it, right? Pick the top 5. Away you go. 2 weeks. Let's see where we are in 2 weeks.
It really is clever, right? If you think about it, each one of these is probably a design team at Discord, and so they can go, okay, what's our roadmap look like? Well, there's some things that obviously will come down from management, but then there's other things where if you have that bandwidth, you can go, okay, well, let's look at text chat. What's going on here? There's a lot of posts there. Number of votes. What's the top vote here? 13,000. Okay, so these are completed, and then you can, I'm sure, filter by maybe no status. That might be a good way to filter on these.
Yeah.
And there you go. Be invisible on one server, but online in another. What does that interface look like? That's something that you can work on in a project, in a portfolio. This is a really cool example, and I wish I would have thought about this when I was in grad school, because this would have given me so many ideas.
Because again, you could show yourself going through that problem, and it's a live problem, and there's nothing to stop you. You do it. You build your portfolio, blah blah blah. But then you can send it to Discord as well.
Right. And hey, here's
I've just done this for you.
Yeah, comment back on it. Say, hey, look, this is potentially one design example of what this might look like, and say, I've done the work for you, and you can, and if they implement it, you can kind of claim credit for it, right? These are unanswered as of now.
And so 3 years ago, so they haven't sold them yet.
Yeah, that means they haven't even touched it. This is 3 years ago. And so here you go. Here's the problem. I've linked you to my design for what this could potentially look like. And, if it has enough votes, you can even sort that, I think this is such a cool way.
I've never actually dug into this before, but you're absolutely right. It well, from both sides of the fence, actually, as a... From a development team perspective, then actually the way that you can utilize that data is quite mad.
Yeah, it really is.
I like that. So,
anyway, there's your free tip for the night. I just given you a ton to work with.
Yes, we need to go back and link it back in that Reddit chat to say, do this. There you go.
Yeah.
Knock yourself out. And and as a way of thanks, then the Patreon is just over there.
Yeah, exactly. If you'd like to thank us or tip us. This is actually really incredible. And I when you have those moments where you feel like you're brilliant, you go.
Well, again, you look at that status setting, and that's basically just their Kanban board.
Yeah, it really is.
And
I'm
so
pretty sure
all they're doing is just they presumably just have a board, a Discord board up there that has them all just nicely listed out on whatever Kanban application you happen to be using.
I'm positive they have their own, but to especially with programs with a lot of users. I'm sure this exists for Facebook. I'm sure this exists for other popular programs, features. Google Drive is probably, a feature request form. They probably exist all over. And like I was saying earlier, in Reddit communities, you usually can sort by top posts and feel like, especially in like the gaming communities where people are like, hey, this problem needs to be solved. Sometimes it's bugs and sometimes that's outside of the human factors realm. But a lot of times you'll have stuff like this. That's your role as a human factors user researcher, UX designer, whatever you want to call it. You can come in, solve a problem, and submit it. And man, it's such a cool thing to be able to do.
Yeah, and I do find that actually, yes, a lot of problems in theory fall outside of the role of human factors. But given what we do and the way that we integrate into projects, I normally find a way.
Yeah, exactly.
If I want to be involved, I can find a tenuous link somewhere. So,
yeah. What's that Han Solo line? Sometimes I manage to even impress myself. What's?
You have done well. So...
Oh, well, I think that's a great place to leave off on. That was a great tip, and I want to leave it there. So if anyone's listening or watching...
We'd only go down after that, so that's perfectly fine.
Yeah, if anyone's listening or watching and uses that tip, let me know. I mean, let us know. It'd be awesome to, see what you come up with. And, I think that's super cool. Jump in our Discord and show us.
It's cool.
You know what? I'm going to make a post on Discord right now about it because it is such a cool, unique thing. So anyway.
I'll leave you to do that. I'm going to go to bed.
You go to bed. You enjoy yourself. Thank you so much for staying up again with us tonight.
No worries. It's been an absolute pleasure. And I shall hopefully see you next time.
All right. See you then.
Catch you later. Bye.
For everyone watching, thanks for hanging out with us. Bye, everybody.